Where were you born?
I was born in Tyler, Texas.
Y'all had like a little house in Clark, Texas?
Yeah.
Or Mark, Texas?
Yeah, it was about big as this office right here where we stayed. So it was very small. It was humble. My mom was a humble person. You know, she picked cotton. Her dad was a sharecropper. So she was right at the edge of slavery. Probably one of the first generations from our side to be free.
Was your grandparents, were they were they slaves?
They were sharecroppers.
Oh, sharecroppers.
And I'm not sure if they were slaves at one time, because they could have been, but we just didn't know. I was so young that I didn't know the questions to ask, and I never asked my mom. But you know what? I got an auntie and an uncle that's still alive, and that's a question I'm going to ask them. Which one of our relatives was slaves? Thank you for that. Thank you for giving me the idea to ask that question. Because that was a question I never asked my mom, I never asked any of my uncles or aunties. But it's definitely something that I should know. Was my grandfather and grandmother slaves?
Right after the slavery, they gave off land to people? Is that what happened?
No, what my grandfather did is they worked the white guy's property. The white guy owned the property and they would go out and work it, and then they would get a piece of the pie. That's what they call sharecropping. Really, it's almost slavery again, but at least you get some money and you don't have to stay where they tell you to stay and eat what they tell you to eat.
You got to experience white bathrooms, white restrooms.
I saw black and white waiting rooms, bathrooms, fountains. I saw those.
How was that? That, bro, nobody in this generation, they don't know about that, and nobody speaks about that.
Well, I was still a kid, you know what I'm saying? I was probably about 6 years old, so it really didn't ring a lot of bells to me, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, this is just the way it is, I don't understand that there was people that lived different than us, that didn't live under the same strengths that we lived under. So it really didn't bother me, when I went in and it was this. I had gotten hurt, and my mom took me to the hospital. And when I went to the hospital, I saw this big, pretty color TV, and it had a sign on it, but I couldn't read anyway. I couldn't read till I was 28 years old in prison. So I just went and turned the TV on, and this white nurse just scolded me, and now I look back at it, my mom didn't say much probably because she was a white lady. Back in Tyler, where I was from, even in the 80s, they were still calling white people sir and ma'am, and the white people would address them by their first name.
Was that mandatory?
Not mandatory, but some things don't have to be mandatory. There's a saying, an elephant, they put this great big change on him, and after a while, they can take the chain off and put a little piece of rope. And the elephant won't go any further than what that rope will allow him to go. When the rope tightens up, the elephant stops. Because his mind has been conditioned that he can't break that change. So when you condition somebody's mind, you don't need to actually pound that on them. Because they already been programmed that this is our limit. We don't go past that limit. So it's a saying, you ain't got to tell black people to go to the back door. They're just gonna go on their own because they've been trained to actually do that.
Where was this at?
Tyler, Texas. Texas was the last state to free the slaves.
That, bro, I lived there 20 years. I did not know. I didn't even know that.
You heard of Juneteenth?
Yeah.
Juneteenth. Juneteenth is when the slaves found out that slavery was over. That's why it's celebrated. And Texas is the only place to celebrate it because they was the only one that was still slaves. That's why they call it the Long State.
That's crazy. I did not know that Texas even had slaves and shit like that.
You didn't know Texas had slaves?
I barely started reading into shit, right?
Oh my goodness. Texas is one of the worst, man.
Yeah. It's really understandable. Now that I know that, and it makes sense. How people treat like, bro, I'm Mexican, bro. Like, they treated me different, you know? Yeah. So now that shit is understandable for real.
Yes.
For sure.